And welcome this morning. We are going to talk about, oh my goodness, autoimmune diseases. How many of us haven't got them? It seems like it's the buzz thing to have these days, but we're going to change that today. So fasten your seatbelt. We're going to learn and grow together. Here we go. Pretty soon, I feel that music's going to be coming on. And I didn't tell you, Dr. Osborne, it is mandatory to dance while the music is playing. So I think we're about to get the music going. Maybe not. Maybe not. Brian, I can't hear anything if it's playing. There we go. Time to dance. You just came back from the gym. There you go. I love this CD.
We make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be. I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a
Here we
friend,
go.
you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show, the purpose of the show is to provide a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening friend, and my viewing friends as well, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, today we're giving out a book for those of you who suffer or have been told that you have an autoimmune disease, or you are wanting to stay away and stay clear because prevention is key, autoimmune disease. Then I want to encourage you to be the 7th caller or texter, 407-373-5959, because today we're going to be discussing the book, No Grain, No Pain. And we've talked about, with other doctors about grain and how it affects the gut, but we're going to go a little bit different today. It's a little bit different. It reminds me of when we have Morley Robbins on the show. He's got just a little different and a little twist. And for some of you, it's going to resonate. And for others, it's just, let's embrace, let's learn about it. Let's see how it resonates with our body. And so today, I want to ask you if you would like to heal your body without medication, huh? Isn't that what we talk about on the show all the time? You can take a pill or you can take responsibility. Now, how many people take these pills to help something and then turn out that you need another pill for the side effect and another pill for that side effect of the 2 pills combined, and then a 3rd pill for the 3 pills that are combined? It becomes maddening. And not only that, it also creates a new disease. And then there's a pill for that one too. So today we're going to talk about how do we stop the madness and start looking at the root cause of whatever is going on. So today we're going to be talking to Dr. Peter Osborne, who has written the book, No Grain, No Pain, right? I think that's the name of the book here. And it's a 30-day diet for eliminating the root cause of our chronic illness. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am grateful that Dr. Peter Osborne is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Osborne, to the Lillian McDermott radio show.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's my pleasure.
Well, I am thrilled. So today, the 7th caller or texter, I'm already getting calls. So make sure that if you really want this book, you nail this one, 407-373-5959. So Dr. Osborne, share a little bit about your background, because your philosophy is a little different, but not much. I mean, I don't want to focus on the differences, but I do want to find out how you came to those differences. But share a little bit about your clinical background and what led you to your beliefs today.
Well, when I was training in graduate school, one of the rotations I was able to do was through rheumatology through the VA hospital here in Houston. And I'm a veteran of the Air Force. And so here we were seeing all these veterans coming in with chronic autoimmune pain diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus and scleroderma and multiple sclerosis and, spondyloarthritis, just, you name it. If it's an autoimmune arthritis, they were coming in with it. And, what we saw day in and day out was nobody really got better. Their pain was being appeased by cancer medications, by strong immune blocking medications, and by steroids. And when that finally failed them and their joints were so destroyed from the disease, then the surgeons came in and then they did joint replacement. It was, again, I'm not anti-medicine, but the feel for me was very much a mill. It was like, let's just treat them until that we can't treat them anymore, and then we'll do surgery. Mm-hmm. And that to me didn't seem like a solution, because these guys, I mean, they were being hopped up on these very, very potent medications. Some of them would end up with cancer because of the medication.
Yes.
Some of them would end up with other types of infections because of the immune suppression, or they'd end up with bone loss because of the chronic steroid use. And that didn't make sense to me. How could you treat one disease and then the very treatment for the condition actually led to more diseases that then you had to continue to medicate more? Just what you were saying opening the show today. And to me, that never really made sense. When I left the VA hospital, because they wouldn't let me practice any nutrition there at all.
And you were there as a doctor. You're going through your residency for a doctor of chiropractic.
That's right. That's right. And so, I brought up, look, let's take some people and let's do nutrition over here. Look at all this research on fasting. If we just have some of these patients fast for 48 hours, the rheumatology research shows that their pain will go away. If we try fish oil, it's as effective as non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. And the research shows that. So let's look at these things. Hey, better yet, let's look at the one model of autoimmune disease where we know the cause, celiac disease. The cause is wheat. The cause is barley and rye. It's gluten. Why don't we at least take an arm of people with these forms of autoimmune disease and see if that diet even helps them at all? At least maybe we can advance science. Maybe it won't work, but maybe it will. And I was kind of laughed at and said, no, we're not going to do any of this stuff. And so when I left, one of my very first patients in private practice was a little girl. And her name was Ginger, and she had a terminal diagnosis, juvenile rheumatoid arthritis. The doctors gave her 6 months to live, and we will come back.
Yeah, and you're now taking over. And we're going to continue our conversation when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. I wanted to hear that story. That's why I was like, okay, so remember Ginger, little Ginger. And so her name is Ginger. How old was she?
9.
9 years old. And she had what?
Juvenile rheumatoid arthritis.
What is the cause of juvenile rheumatoid arthritis?
Well, the actual cause is multifactorial, but for most people, it's food combined with chemical exposures, as well as, there's some other things that contribute to it as well. In some cases, infections, certain types of bacterial infections.
Yeah, I saw that. I definitely want to, I want to make sure that we nail the causes, because you were talking about 190 autoimmune diseases. I wish I had the physical. I told Ashley, I said, I'm going to need a new place just for all my books. I said, if we can do the PDFs, that would be great. Because I can, but now it's like when I'm holding the book and when I'm flipping through the pages, I love that. But I've got so many books because I love to keep my books. And so I have like a closet full of books, and I'm going to need another closet full of books. So I have you on PDF. So I can't flip through the pages and show the pictures of the book. So I may have to change that. But in there, you're talking about the 4 causes of the 190 immune diseases. There's just so much to get in. And I was kind of wrapping my mind on this, because you and I are very like-minded. I'm not against pills, because I've had people get so offended about my registered service march, which is you could take a pill, you could take responsibility. I tell them I'm not against pills. I'm just for doing everything we can to help ourselves, help our body, give our bodies what we need. We would never put sand in our gas tank and expect our car to run. And we wouldn't be shocked if the car didn't run. But for some reason, we treat our body, and I just wrote an article that our body is a temple, and that we're allowing terrorists in our body. We would never, if we were the keepers of the Taj Mahal or the holiest of holies, we would never allow terrorists in knowingly, right? But that's what we're doing with our body.
Yeah, it's amazing that, that translation hasn't occurred. I think a large part of that has to do with when a person goes to a doctor, they think that the doctor has that knowledge about nutrition when the average doctor has less than 7 hours of clinical training.
I know.
So,
Here we go.
So
we're back on the air.
Have more knowledge.
We're going back on the air. So
59.
so funny.
Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow with one another. Today, the book is called No Grain, No Pain, but there's a little variation to the grain because we've always heard that it's about wheat and gluten. But Dr. Peter Osborne will share with us that it's more than just that. Even quinoa? Don't do this to me, Dr. Osborne. Okay, so let's talk about autoimmune disease and the myths of autoimmune disease, because you cover this in the book. And by the way, be the 7th caller or texter, and you can win a copy of this book, 407-373-5959. Okay, so let's talk about autoimmune disease and what is autoimmune disease.
So autoimmune disease is basically a process when the immune system, it looks at your own tissues. And it sees not your tissue, but it sees the potential for your tissue to be an enemy. So it attacks it. And the progenesis, or the kind of the precursor to autoimmune disease, there's 4 trigger points. One trigger is infection. One trigger is vitamin and mineral deficiency. One trigger is food allergens. And one trigger is environmental chemicals. So we have these 4 basic big triggers. Now there are other categorical triggers. Emotional responses can be a trigger. Somebody who goes through traumatic experience in life and the stress from that can be a trigger. But most people who have chronic autoimmune disease, in my personal experience, don't have it over emotional problems. They have emotional problems over not being able to find out why they're sick, because they've all been told they're crazy. They didn't have a big emotional trauma. They had either an infection or a vitamin or mineral deficiency or a food allergen, or they had a chemical exposure, or a combination of those 4 things over enough time that there's this process called molecular mimicry. Let me define what that is. So first happens something called leaky gut, whereas when you have damage from food, it can cause little microscopic holes in your gut lining. And so these little microscopic holes, imagine the toxins from your poop leaking into your bloodstream, because that's basically what's happening. So when that happens, some of these toxins look like you. Some of these toxins, for example, in some of the foods that you're eating and some of the bacteria that are harboring or living in your gut, some of these things look like your joints, or they look like your thyroid gland, or they look like your skin, or they look like your hair follicle, or they look like your liver. And so at first, your immune system is just seeing these things leaking through a leaky gut, because 70% of your immune system is right behind your gut wall. So these things are leaking into your immune system, and your immune system is saying, we need to defend the body from these things that are leaking through. We don't want these things to come in and hurt us. Yeah. So it attacks them, and it tries to quarantine them off. But over time, the immune system starts seeing the thyroid and says, hey, you know what? The bacteria that's been leaking through that hole looks like the thyroid. The thyroid's an enemy. And then it starts to attack the thyroid too. So we get an autoimmune condition. Now, there are a plethora of different forms of autoimmune disease. It's all based on location. The way doctors basically diagnose it is based on location. So if you've got, for example, rheumatoid arthritis, it's a location issue plus a lab issue. Doctors will run some labs if you have morning stiffness, if you have positive rheumatoid factor, and the pain is predominantly in your wrists, hands, or knees. That's usually what they call rheumatoid arthritis. Now, if the pain travels around from one joint to the next, to the next, to the next, it's typically what we call reactive or migratory arthritis. If the pain is in your soft tissue and you have a rash on your face that looks like a butterfly, that's what we typically call lupus. So all these autoimmune diseases have a similar underlying origin or cause, meaning those 4 factors that I just talked about. Yeah. But how each one of those 4 factors affects different people is very, very different. And let me give you kind of an example. If we lined 1,000 people up and we gave 1,000 people aspirin, they would not all have the exact same effect from taking that aspirin. Some people would have an anaphylactic shock and die, right? Aspirin kills 13,000 people a year. properly used. Some people, their headaches would go away. Some people, the aspirin would cause gastric bleeding or intestinal bleeding.
Yeah.
For some people, it would do nothing, right? So think of those causes as different people reacting in different ways, because we're all unique. We all have our own set of unique genetics, and we all have our own unique environment.
Okay, so you're talking location, which we've heard all about location and how important location is. But here's again, you're talking about molecular, kind of like mimicry, but there's also Lyme disease, and there's also other things that mimic whatever we have. So there's a process of elimination, right, that you go through?
Yes.
Okay, but then there's also when you think about the location, food can mimic, because if we're eating foods that the body can't process, it will also look at food as a violator of the body, right?
Absolutely.
So at what point do we know what's right for us, and that our autoimmune disease? So you're saying all autoimmune diseases are created from the start of a gluten allergy?
No.
No?
I'm saying that gluten allergy plays a huge role in autoimmune disease. And scientifically speaking, it is the only validated, confirmed, 100% believed in cause for any one autoimmune disease. This is what I was talking about. When I was in the VA hospital, I wanted to use the celiac model in rheumatological disease, meaning, look, we know celiac disease is caused by gluten. Why wouldn't we look at Hashimoto's or rheumatoid arthritis or lupus and gluten too? Because if most doctors would argue, we don't know what causes autoimmune disease. It's idiopathic, meaning we have no idea what causes it, yet we know of an autoimmune disease and we know the exact cause. Why wouldn't we use that as a model? Because why would we use Enbrel or these really powerful immune suppressing drugs that we know cause cancer, and we actually know they also contribute to further deterioration of the body and autoimmune disease? Why would we use that as the first line therapy?
I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because the pharmaceutical industry makes a lot of money. And it's show me the money, show me the money. It doesn't matter. And we have been desensitized to think that the white coats and the pharmaceutical industry and the FDA and all these companies that make a promise to protect us will protect us. And if you think about it, in the Bible, we're compared to sheep. And what do sheep do? They follow the shepherd. And the shepherd has become this white cloth, this white coat that we don't even question anymore. And so we've got to, and I hate using that word, there's no other way. We need to wake up. We just need to wake up and see that we are our own MD, our own medical detective. That is it. And so if we get just so angry that we've been lied to, but we don't. We say, okay, well, let me trust this other medicine. And, we've been so dumbed down and trained. And I was just sharing this with some other person this week. I was saying I was watching, every time you watch a commercial, beware of pharmaceutical commercials. You see all the beautiful imagery. It is so beautiful and so seductive. But if you think about it, I've got diabetes. I'm taking this new pill. And then that's it. That's all they say. And then the next thing you see, it's like a auctioneer talking about all the diseases that you're going to get from taking this particular pill. But all the imagery in the background is a happy family. They're jumping around at the beach, and it could cause diarrhea. It could cause inflammation. It could cause death. And please consult your physician if. But we still take the pill. Why is it that we still take the pill?
I think a lot of people are eager for a quick solution,
But it's not.
What you say, you can take a pill or you can take responsibility. It's infinitely harder to take responsibility and take blame, because most autoimmune disease is self-inflicted. Now, saying that being the case, that doesn't mean you look at yourself and you beat yourself up in the mirror and say, I'm a dummy. I shouldn't have done that. It's just about getting educated and knowing that there's a different way. It's about taking the responsibility of saying, look, this is where I'm at. We can't rehash the past. We have to move forward. I can either move forward with a learning and loving and nurturing type of behavior, or I can move forward and continue to pass on my responsibility of my health and my body and my life to somebody else who doesn't know me, doesn't come home and eat with my family, doesn't spend time with me on the holidays, doesn't know me from Adam. I've spent 5 minutes in a room with a guy in a white coat, and he's given me a prescription that has the lethality to kill me, and has told me that diet is unimportant. Like, that's what really infuriates me the most. It's not that a person can go to a doctor and get a prescription. It's that a person can go to a doctor and the doctor can say nutrition is not important when they're not qualified to say that.
Correct.
I know what training in nutrition is about. I've got more than 10,000 hours in clinical training in nutrition. The average medical doctor has about 7 hours in a one nutrition class in medical school that didn't teach them about how good nutrition was. It taught them about how unimportant nutrition was. And that infuriates me, because the average person goes to a doctor thinking that that doctor knows nutrition. So there's that level of trust and confidence in a person. It would be like, okay, if I'm going to the plumber and I'm saying, this plumber is qualified, this person knows how to fix pipes, but this person really never trained in fixing pipes. He trained in electrical engineering. So how well is that plumber, who I think is a plumber, going to fix this electrical problem? And again, it's a mismatch. The people that go to see the doctor don't realize that. Most people just have no idea.
So let's go back to little Ginger. You had mentioned that when you were in your residency, there was a young little girl that was given a death sentence. She was 9 years old, named Ginger. Let's take the process and just use Ginger as an example. What happened there?
So Ginger had a permanent stent embedded in her arm. So imagine your daughter, right? Your 9-year-old daughter with a permanent piece of plastic embedded in the arm, because she was in and out of the hospital so frequently for severe pain racked across her whole body. Her knees would swell up to the size of softballs. Now, she was a tiny little thing, and she couldn't function. As a kid, she couldn't crawl on the floor like other kids. She couldn't go to the playground on the merry-go-round. She couldn't get on the swings. And here she was, being hopped up on very, very strong medications, told, now that the medications have failed you, Mrs., I won't mention her last name, but Ginger's mom, your daughter's getting ready to die. You need to go home and prepare for her funeral. There's nothing more we can do. And that's how she found me. She found me not as the first line of resort. She found me as, we have no other choice. We got to go listen to this guy over here that the medical establishment is calling crazy. And we have to trust that that's going to work, because we have no other options, right? So that's how they found me. And so when she came in, we ran tests. I'm a big believer in objectivity. I'm a scientist at heart. And so objectivity was testing for the right things, and doing the right tests, though, become important. A lot of doctors test for what you have, but they don't test for why you have it. And I believe in testing for why a person might have a problem, not what they have. To me, it's infinitely more important and more valuable to know what changes we can empower a person to make. So we tested little Ginger for food allergies. We tested her for infections. We tested her for nutritional deficiencies, and we tested her for chemical responses. And one of the biggest problems we found with her was she was gluten sensitive. And so obviously the next step was going gluten-free. Now, she had 6 months to live, but inside of 6 months after changing her diet, we had the stent removed from her arm. She was no longer going back to the hospital. Now, Ginger today is in her 20s. She's graduated from high school. She played volleyball in high school. So she went from not being able to run around and do anything to being able to play volleyball. And all because we changed her diet. Gluten was the biggest culprit in her case.
Very good. What a great story. For those of you who'd like a copy of the book called No Grain, No Pain, 407-373-5959. Be the 7th caller to leave a message, or text her 407-373-5959 and get a free copy of No Grain, No Pain. And we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Osborne when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. I'm so glad we got to Ginger's story. So glad. Because I remember I just started, okay, let's talk about autoimmune disease. Let's talk about all this stuff. And then I looked down and I went, Ginger. We need to talk about Ginger. Okay, so great that story. It wasn't the diagnosis that was killing her. It was the pills, the pharmaceutical industry, plus the food, plus all the other stuff. So when you did all this chemical exposure, one of the things I wanted to talk to you, I watched a video of yours where you talked about vitamin D. Now, when I made that comparison with Morley Robbins, he talks about how dangerous vitamin D vitamin supplements are. What is your philosophy on vitamin D?
I don't think vitamin supplements are dangerous at all.
Okay.
I think inappropriately used, I think they can be mismanaged.
Okay, share more about that.
Yeah, so let's use vitamin D as the example since that's the one you brought up. Let's take a person who lives above 27 degrees north latitude, where they have very little capacity to get sunshine, and they're extremely vitamin D deficient, which is a very, very common thing. It's estimated more than 70% of the population above that latitude has a vitamin D deficiency. And we know from the literature and the research that's already been done on vitamin D that deficiency has been linked to 19 forms of terminal cancer.
Yep.
We know it can cause diabetes.
Absolutely right.
We know vitamin D deficiency can cause muscle loss and muscle weakness.
Yes.
We know because of its hormonal function that vitamin D is necessary to regulate how immune cells mature and evolve. And that's why vitamin D deficiency by itself, with no other problems, can cause autoimmune disease. It's been linked directly to type 1 diabetes, and it's also been linked directly to rheumatoid arthritis. And when I say linked, I don't mean associated with like a loose association. I mean causal, direct cause and effect. Right. So to say that vitamin D supplementation is dangerous, I don't agree with that.
Good. Okay. I just heard that real quick, and you didn't go into the depth of it. So I'd love to learn more. So what kind of vitamin D, because there's now a new trend of whole food plant-based vitamins and the synthetic vitamins. So do you have a preference to one or the other?
I believe in the right dose for the right person. As natural as we can get it. So if you're talking about a whole food supplement, look, a whole food supplement's not going to correct a severe vitamin D deficiency in a person who's been chronically ill for 20 years. That's just the reality of it, especially if again, living in a northerly climate. I'm a believer because if we look at whole food, where do we get vitamin D? We get vitamin D predominantly from sunshine.
Correct.
It's one of those vitamins that you eat less of it and you get exposed to more of it. But our medical system today has scared everyone away from the sun, claiming that skin cancer, is an inevitability of sun exposure.
Yeah, but skin cancer is because of all the chemicals in our sunscreen.
Right. So it's really kind of a topsy-turvy thing. But the reality is that if you're not getting sunshine, you can get some vitamin D from liver. You can get some vitamin D as well from mushrooms. Those are food-based sources, but you can't get enough. It's not enough. Our skin is designed to synthesize vitamin D. We have a specialized type of cholesterol that is in our skin called 7-dehydrocholesterol that's converted into vitamin D when UV light, when UV radiation is what creates that conversion. So if you've got somebody who's not got the capacity for UV radiation exposure, if they live in London and it's raining, 80% of the year, they're not getting adequate vitamin D. And so what is your other option? You can either supplement, or you can take long extended holidays to areas of the globe where there's going to be the possibility to get more sun.
Well, I live in Florida, and you would think that all of us here have a surplus of vitamin D, but we don't. We don't. So I don't know if now, because of all the chemicals and all the things that are blocking us from creating our bodies, creating the things that we need to naturally create, I wonder if now not even the sun.
Well, part of that is the vitamin D pathway metabolically is inhibited by statins. And so many people are taking cholesterol lowering medications, and by default, they don't even realize it, but they're blocking their capacity to produce internally vitamin D when they do get that exposure.
Okay. So this is where I talk about my website, and then I'll reintroduce you, okay?
At 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn with one another. You can hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I am really enjoying my conversation with Dr. Peter Osborne on and off the air. So I want to encourage you to go to whenyouneedafriend.com, become a subscriber. While you're there, check out my sponsors, because without my sponsors, there would not be a show. So please make sure that when you go to whenyouneedafriend.com, not only do you become a subscriber and get some free gifts, and the show gets sent to you on your iPhone or tablet when you become a subscriber, you also get to some free gifts like my 90-day challenge to self-love ebook and all the different things that you get from just being a part of this movement. And I want to say here that whenyouneedafriend.com is created to change the way we look at the word responsibility. Earlier, Dr. Peter Osborne was talking about how, we need to, that it's not our fault, that we need to be responsible and look forward as opposed to backwards. So here's a little variation of that. And I just want to share this with Dr. Osborne as well. The word responsibility that we talk about is about empowerment and freedom. It really doesn't matter what the past is, what's been done to you, what you've done. The moment that you say, I am taking ownership, no matter what has been done, I am taking ownership of how I respond to it. And I'm going to turn this into a blessing in my life. And I'm going to use this to bless others. That's the kind of responsibility. And I want to encourage you to join this reframing, join this movement of reframing the word responsibility from victim to empowerment, to responsible. And so if you, so once you're at whenyouneedafriend.com, click up my YouTube, click on YouTube, subscribe there, click on the buttons for my social media, like me there, and check out my podcast. You can go there. There's so many ways we can stay connected. You could also call me at 407-373-5959. This is where we look at life with curiosity. And today, if you want to learn more about Dr. Peter Osborne's book, it's called No Grain, No Pain. You can be the 7th caller or texter at 407-373-5959. Be the 7th caller to leave a message or texter to just say that you want the book, and you'll win a free copy of No Grain, No Pain. So here's the deal. Today we have Dr. Peter Osborne. Dr. Osborne, we were talking about your background. You're not an MD, you're a DC, who also has a pastoral and like a pastoral ministry, or what do you call it? Pastoral ministry in science. A doctorate in science, pastoral science. And I thought that was very neat how you said, you have to separate both of them. You in the state of Texas, you have to separate both. But isn't that what healing is? It's a mind, body, spirit approach.
Absolutely.
So you have gone beyond that. So not only are you a doctorate, you have a doctorate in chiropractic, but you also focus on the spiritual aspect of it. And yesterday when I was looking at your book, I took lots of notes. We couldn't even discuss all of it today. But here's what I thought. How beautiful that you can take the spiritual aspect, because I've had doctor after doctor come on the Lillian McDermott radio show and say, all disease has an emotional, spiritual component to it. So when it comes to autoimmune, let's just go there. When it comes to autoimmune, what combination have you seen that this is? You talked about the 4 causes of autoimmune diseases, which you say there's 190 autoimmune diseases. So you have food, chemical exposures, vitamin and mineral deficiencies, and you also have infection. Of all of that, how does that compare to the spiritual aspect, the emotional aspect from trauma or anything that's happened in our life that we refuse to look at?
So let me paint a picture for you,
okay,
to be even more comprehensive.
Love pictures.
There's something called the triangle of health, and there's an image of this in the book as well. The triangle of health has 3 walls, as triangles do. So imagine a triangle, and at the center of this triangle is your genetic code. You were born with this wonderful gift of your DNA. Mm-hmm. You are here today because your parents and grandparents and great-grandparents and ad infinitum, they all survived. They all survived, and here you are, this miracle, right? Because you have the best DNA. So your genes are not to blame for any of your illness. So that's the center of your triangle. Now you have 3 walls of your triangle, and one wall is a spiritual wall, one wall is a biochemical wall, and another wall is a physical wall. So the 4 causes that we've been talking about are the 4 triggers along the biochemical wall. Mm-hmm. So those are biochemical triggers. Chemicals are defined as anything that you breathe in, eat in, take into your body from the environment that can affect you in ways that you cannot see. So they affect you when you eat, for example, when you eat some cabbage, And that vitamin C in that cabbage, you don't see that vitamin C getting inside of you and doing a little dance and, protecting you.
My vitamin C does. But go ahead. My cabbage all dances inside of me. Go ahead.
But those are the chemical elements. You don't see them at work, but we know they're at work because we can study them.
Gotcha.
The physical elements, there's an old saying, square tires don't roll. Structure dictates function. So if you're overweight, if you have scoliosis, if you sit in a desk for 12 hours a day and you never exercise, those are structural elements. Those can also contribute to disease as well. When we're sedentary, look, a body of water at rest becomes stagnant and ill, right? Your body is a body of water. 70% of you is made out of water. So if you're still all the time and there's no motion and no movement, that's a physical imbalance. And so the physical wall is just as important.
Yes.
And that's where a lot of my chiropractic background, we study the physical frame, the neuromusculoskeletal physical frame of the body. And then you have the spiritual side. And the spiritual side, we've all probably heard our parents say this. You are who you hang out with, right? That's true. You are who you hang out with. You are a reflection of the 5 best friends that you have in the world. All those cliche things that you hear.
Show me who your friends are. I'll tell you who you are.
Yeah.
I remember going, Mom, when I said that to my kids, Mommy, where are you, Mommy? And I became the mommy. Okay.
Right.
Yes.
But the spiritual and the personal energy you surround yourself with is going to impact who you are.
Yes.
And if you don't acknowledge that or aren't willing to acknowledge that, that's a big gaping hole in your health. So if you think of your genes as being, you can't change what they are, but you can change how they behave.
That's
right. And the way you change how your genes behave is through the walls of that triangle. You either behave physically different, you behave biochemically different, or you behave spiritually different. Mm-hmm. Okay. And generally speaking, with autoimmunity, those 3 walls, not only do they talk to each other, as they talk to your DNA. So you can't separate one from the other. That's holism. And so the approach, what I call the triangle of health, other doctors might call functional medicine. But the approach is we have to look at the person as they are as a whole, and we can't put on blinders and say, okay, your knee hurts. We're only going to look at your knee, but we're not going to look at the tendons and the ligaments that attach to your knee. We're not going to look at the rest of your spine or your posture that might be contorted, that's putting extra pressure on your knee. We're not going to look at the nutrients that we know you need to build new cartilage. So we're going to ignore that component, right? And we're also not going to think about whether or not you might actually be doing some things in your life, like sitting too much or whatever that might be, that could be impacting your knee as well. So again, you go to the most doctors and they have a tunnel vision approach, and that the reason why that model has failed, and look around, we're full of a world of sick people. We have more illness and more disease, yet we spend more money than any other country in the world, and we're ranked 37th in overall healthcare, not because there's not enough drugs, but because there's not enough common sense that's being handed down from doctors. Doctor means teacher. So it's the position, in my opinion, of the doctor to teach the patient. The patient goes to the doctor because the doctor's at a level of trust, and the patient says, I trust you to give me the right information to help empower me. But that relationship is contorted in today's world, and that it's now, I trust you to give me what I need so that now I become dependent on you in order to continue to be symptomatic free or symptom free. And that just doesn't work. The old Bible saying, give a man a fish or teach a man to fish. And I'm a big believer in teaching to fish so that we can eat for a lifetime. And that's what healthcare should be about.
Yes. And doctors now equate to God, because we go for that source of what's going to heal us. Now, I want to shift a little, because I know that this segment is almost to a close, but I do want to shift a little to what gluten is and why gluten. Maybe you can give us a real small explanation of why gluten bothers our body.
Simply put, gluten is not one protein. It is a family of proteins found in the seeds of grass. The seeds of grass, which are seeds, are designed not to be human food as much as they're designed to perpetuate their own species. If all the seeds were eaten up, there would be no more grass, right? So think of it like this, from a perspective of the seed is designed to protect itself from predators, just like you are designed to protect yourself from predators. You've got legs, you've got fists, you can fight, you can run, right? Seeds are not animate objects. They can't fight and run. They have to have the ability to protect themselves chemically, and they do. And the family of gluten proteins that are found in the seeds of grass is one of those biochemical protective mechanisms that they have. That's the simplest, non-scientific, non-technical way I could break it down.
I love it. I love it. Very powerful imagery. And we're going to continue our conversation. But first, please feel free to call 407-373-5959. Be the seventh caller or texter, 407-373-5959, and win your copy of No Grain, No Pain. And we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Peter Osborne when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. This is information that we don't get from our doctors. And this is something I say, Dr. Osborne, and I don't know if you agree with it, but when I go to someone that's going to be my physical trainer, like a, what do you call that? You know, a coach that
Personal trainer.
Personal trainer, yes. If I want to go to a personal trainer, I want to make sure that they look better than me. If I'm going to go to a health coach or a life coach, I'm a certified life coach. I want to make sure their crap is put together. If I go to a doctor, I don't want them to be morbidly obese. I want my doctor to look healthy. I want them, because I look, you know, when you were talking about show me your 5 friends and I'll tell you where you're at in your life, you know, if I say, you know, if I look at my doctor and just my own judgment, not to say they're wrong and I'm right, I'm going to go to a doctor that shows that they're healthy. They exercise, they're fit, they're sharp, they know what they're doing. Maybe they focus on everything. I love that triangle that you talked about as well. So why is it that we're getting health tips from someone who is smoking a pack a day of cigarettes, that's maybe morbidly obese themselves and ready to be like they're a French fry away from a heart attack? This is what their doctors, some of them, not all of them, I don't want any letters, not all of them, but most of them.
No, you're absolutely right. I feel like, look, I think different people get into different professions for different reasons. And, you know, as a health coach, you probably see this quite a bit. Some people are miserable in what they do. They don't belong in the career field that they're in. They've just found themselves there. Maybe they were coerced there. Maybe that's just their life story is they ended up as a doctor, but that's not really what they were passionate or being called to do. It's just it's just the direction that they got pushed. Those people, look, they're not the best people to take advice from. No different than somebody who ended up being, you know, an electrician who doesn't like what he does. He's miserable every day. Like, I love what I do. I love it. That's why, you know, I have a huge online following. We have, you know, 250,000 people that subscribe to Gluten-Free Society's newsletter. You know, I have a very successful book that's been written. Mm-hmm. I don't have to be in my clinic. I love to be in my clinic. Sure. And that's why I don't leave it, because the day I don't like it anymore, I will step away and I will probably train somebody to take my place. I believe that if you're going to be in this world and make an impact and make a difference, you need to love what you do. And there just aren't enough doctors that are out there that love what they do. And I think one of the reasons why is the way they receive their training. When they go through, maybe in the beginning, they're like, yeah, I want to save the world. I want to change the world. But once they go through their training, it just crushes them. And they're like, I can't ask questions. I'm being told I have to recommend things that I don't really believe in. Exactly. And if I don't keep up the facade, I'm going to get reported to the board and they're going to take my license away. And I've just spent, you know, $250,000 getting schooling.
Yeah. Dr. Carlos Garcia was on the show just recently, and he has a clinic for healing the body from cancer and disease. And he's very controversial. And he said, you can't take away my license. You know, for healing the body, that's something somebody thinks that can happen. They can't do it. Well, we need to spread that a little bit more so doctors can step forward. I want to talk about the 30-day
407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
And welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where you can hear us worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. I am your host, Lillian McDermott. I'm excited that we're having this conversation, no grain, no pain. Real quickly, Dr. Peter Osborne, for those of you, 407-373-5959, win a free copy of be the seventh caller or texter that wins a free copy of No Grain, No Pain. For those of you who maybe know somebody or have an autoimmune disease, or are not feeling well and just can't figure out what you have. Maybe you've been told that it's all in your head, and possibly it could be that you know, what's in your head is fear of being sick, and that fear of being sick promotes another fear. So, you know, there's so many different things that all work together. I love Dr. Osborne's example of the triangle, but let's talk about the grains, because Dr. Osborne, unfortunately, this is our last segment. I wish we could talk all day long about this, and I'm sure we could, but you have come up with the 30-day, it's like an elimination. Share a little bit about that and what grains are allowed, because I earlier I said, no, not quinoa. You said quinoa is a grain as well. So let's talk about your 30-day challenge that you have.
So the 30-day challenge is broken down into two 15-day segments. So chapter 7 and 8 of the book break those down. The first 15 days is a little bit easier. We're eliminating grain. We're not eliminating as much food because what I'm really after is, in my experience, is very simple. When a person eliminates grain, if they have a chronic autoimmune disease, they feel better. And they feel better, you know, typically within 15 days, unless there's some other major crushing event or some other thing going on in their life, which also absolutely desperately needs to be addressed. But the vast majority of people with chronic autoimmune disease will feel better in the first 15 days. Then the second 15 days, so the 30-day, taking it out, we do a little bit more restriction. We're taking away the dairy and the sugar. We're taking away the processed artificial garbage foods. We're taking away the chemicals on top of the grain. Now, when I say grain, I don't mean wheat, barley, and rye. There's an entire community of people with celiac disease that have been told wheat, barley, and rye are the only foods that they need to avoid. But in my experience in the clinic, as well as in other researchers' experience, and this is actually how I stumbled across it, was a study came across my desk saying that 92% of celiac patients that went free, wheat, barley, and rye free, still had persistent inflammatory damage on their biopsies when they went back in to follow up with their doctors, even after being on a gluten-free diet for a prolonged period of time. Mm-hmm. 92% of these people weren't healing. And when I started years ago, actually, it was in my patients that led me to this, because they weren't getting better. They were getting kind of better, and then they would go backwards again. And we actually called it gluten-free whiplash, because they went gluten-free, they felt better, and then started going backwards. And so what we found is that there are other glutens. I was talking to plant scientists and botanists, and I'm like, well, tell me all about everything you know about gluten. And what we found was that gluten is not just in wheat, barley, and rye. There's one kind of gluten called alpha-gliadin, which is found in wheat, barley, and rye. And that protein was discovered in 1952, and it was labeled as the reason that celiac disease was being caused. But it was unfortunately mislabeled, because lots of different gluten proteins can cause celiac disease. Corn can cause the same villus atrophy that is present in celiac disease. So can soy, so can sugar, so can pesticides. And all the science has been done. All the research has been done. I didn't do the research. I just read the research and applied it in a clinical setting with patients. And what we found was nothing short of miraculous. All those people that were gluten-free whiplashed, right, that were like, I'm gluten-free, but I have 6 more autoimmune diseases and I don't know why, and here I'm on all these other medications. When we started eliminating all grain from their diet, something magical happened. And that was they needed less medicine, they felt better, their autoimmune diseases tended to dwindle down. And so from that perspective, over the last 15 years or so, I've just continued to refine that process.
Okay, and so you call it grainflammation. Grainflammation. Okay, so what about all these gluten-free products, Dr. Osborne? I mean, they have gluten-free beer, they have gluten-free oats, they have gluten-free, you name it. It's a new industry out there, and gluten-free is just like everybody's eating it up. So what do you say about that?
I say that industry is, for the largest part, extremely unhealthy. And whether we want to debate what gluten is in a scientific forum, that's one thing. But to create products for the gluten-free industry, remember who the people who need to go gluten-free are. They're chronically sick people. There's a rule in nutrition. You can't get healthy eating food that's not healthy.
Sure.
So to create a whole line of products and call them gluten-free and give them to people who are chronically sick and expect those people to somehow restore their health is foolhardy. And so that whole industry, I mean, those foods are full of processed garbage. They're full of hydrogenated fat. They're full of sugar. They're full of genetically modified ingredients. They're full of pesticides. And on top of it, most of them are made from corn and rice, and corn and rice are not gluten-free. And if you want to argue that, we can have a whole nother show and argue that. And have that
I'm not going to argue with you, that's for sure. But
Yeah.
I will research it too, because I did read that in your book, and I thought, this is interesting. Rice and all these. So, it made sense today was, as you were saying, that the thing that you said, this gluten-free industry is going out there, they're making these claims. But the same thing happened with the sugar-free industry. So the sugar-free industry comes out and says, oh, this is sugar-free. And all of us started going sugar-free. And it was full of aspartame and full of junk that is just as poisonous for our body as, the sugar is itself. So you're saying that this is like an apples to apples comparison, where the sugar-free industry has just boomed. The gluten-free industry now is booming, but how could they claim gluten-free if it has gluten in it?
Because the FDA's definition of gluten is alpha-gliadin. And the botanical definition of gluten isn't the same thing. So it's all about food. Remember, there wasn't even a food labeling law on gluten until just a few years ago. Yes. So it's really think of it as a renegade. It's a renegade area where we can call lots of things gluten-free. And until the food labeling law, now the food labeling law exists, it just has to be alpha-gliadin free, which means it has to be free of wheat, barley, and rye only. And it has to test, if you're going to certify it gluten-free, it has to test for less than 20 parts per billion of wheat, barley, and rye protein. So that's basically what the FDA definition states can be.
So what should we look at then if we are looking to truly be gluten-free? Just avoid all grain?
Avoid all grain. And if if you're buying it in a box or a package, read the label. It's not even just about avoiding grain. It's about eating real food. If you can't pronounce the terms on the label, if it's a bunch of chemicals, that's not real food. And it doesn't matter whether it's gluten-free, truly gluten-free and grain-free or not. If it's garbage, it's garbage.
Well, what about China and all the places in Latin communities?
Highest rates of diabetes in the world. Everybody thinks Chinese are like some kind of ancient wisdom, healthy people. Remember the old Calgon commercials?
Yes, take me away. Oh, so you do remember some of these commercials. Okay.
Yeah. That's all marketing myth stuff. I mean, India has the worst diabetes rates in the world. China follows them. They have their own chronic health issues, major chronic health issues. Let's not compare ourselves in America to those folks because of their rice consumption. They have big problems over it.
Well, I know that McDougall also, he's a lover of rice. I mean, so I wonder where that balance is. Now, not everybody is gluten intolerant, right?
Right. So that's a good point. So to be very succinct here, I'm not saying that the whole world needs to be gluten-free. I'm simply saying that if you suffer with an autoimmune disease and you don't know why you have it, going gluten-free, following no grain, no pain for 30 days is a great first step to see if that's a right move for you. But if you really want to know whether you're gluten sensitive or not, you need to get genetically tested. Genetic testing, there's two gene patterns. They're called HLA-DQ alpha 1 and HLA-DQ beta 1 genes. And if you get genetically tested, you will know whether or not the gluten-free diet is the right diet for you to follow. But again, we can't make blanket statements for the whole world. Everybody is going to be sick if they eat gluten. And I think that's an important acknowledgement.
Very good. Dr. Peter Osborne, I have a feeling this conversation is going to continue, and it's something that we need to look into ourselves. So thank you so much, Dr. Osborne, for sharing this information, for letting us know that there's another. I'm still kind of like suffering over the quinoa issue because I thought this is going to be my thing is quinoa. I can beat it with quinoa. But thank you so much, Dr. Osborne, for sharing your wisdom and helping us see a new truth when it comes to grain. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me on. This has been great.
And to you, my listening friend, so much to look at, so much consider. What will you do with this information? Please remember, I'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. Good job. Good information. Great job, Dr. Osborne. Is there anything that you'd like to share before we go that we did not cover on the show?
There's so much to share. That's the whole thing, right?
How did you condense this book? Honestly, how did you condense this book into what you have? This is really good stuff. I'm grateful to you for what you're doing. And I think we need to continue to explore this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much. And the website is drpeterosborne.com. That's drpeterosborne.com. Thank you, Dr. Osborne, for sharing your wisdom. And I really do appreciate it. I look forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, same here.
Okay, hold on a second. Okay, so I'm turning this back on. Okay, because I want to know exactly what testing we can do to find out if we really are gluten-free, because what's the point of going through all of this if we are not? So what's the name of the test, and where can we get it, and what's the cost?
It's about $380.
Affordable.
And you can go to glutenfreesociety.org, O-R-G. There's a big link at the top of the page that says genetic testing. And you can learn more about it there, but that's the type of testing that you should, if you really want to commit to the diet. So many people go, you know how diets work.
Yep.
I'm going to do this New Year's resolution for 6 weeks, and they do great, right? But then the slippery slope is, okay, they let bad things back in, and then 6 months down the road, they're right back where they started because there's no long-term conviction, because there's no objective reason to be long-term committed. There's lots of subjective reasons. I felt better. I had more energy. But then life gets in the way. That's why I like to test, because when you know black and white, look, you are a gluten-sensitive person, and what does that mean to commit to a gluten-free diet? That's a 12-week learning curve at least. So if you do a 30-day plan, and I've given you kind of steps to follow, you still haven't passed the learning curve, right? You still have a lot to learn about this.
It needs to become our truth. It's not just your truth. And that's why I talk about a new truth. It's our truth. And so, so what is the test called?
It's called HLA-DQ testing. That's the technical name.
HLA-DQ test. And that'll test to see what are they looking at?
We're looking at genotype patterns. So understand what HLA-DQ is. It's a set of genes, 2 genes on chromosome 6. And what these genes do is they produce an antenna that sticks off of the surface of your immune cells. So imagine your immune cells here. You got a little antenna sticking off the top of it. That antenna's job is like a sniff dog in the airport. It's seeking out what the body needs to be aware of and potentially create an immune response to protect the body from it, right? So when gluten comes into contact with that antenna, if your antenna has a genetic pattern that it doesn't like gluten, it's going to create an immune inflammatory response against gluten every time you eat it. And so, look, your body has some resiliency. You can eat gluten for 20 years and you just slowly get sick over time, right? Because inflammation doesn't kill us today. It's like cancer's chronic inflammation over time, diabetes, chronic inflammation over time, autoimmune disease, chronic inflammation over time. So if you have these gluten-sensitive gene patterns, what that means is every time you eat gluten, that you're creating an inflammatory response. Your food should not be the battle that you're fighting, right? So when you're eating food, you're trying to get nourished. But if you're eating food and instead of that food nourishing you, it's creating an inflammatory response, now your body has to clean up the inflammation. So you're using more vitamins and minerals to clean up the inflammation. This is one of the reasons why Floridians have vitamin D deficiency, even though they're in the sun, is they're eating wrong and they're inflamed. And they're using more of their vitamin D up to battle the inflammation all the time. So that even though they're in the sun, they still have a problem with correcting the D deficiency because they're using that D, every bit of it, to battle their choices. So understanding that if you have genetics of gluten sensitivity, you can eat it. But you will also understand that if you do, the consequence will be to create an inflammatory cascade that if it happens for a long enough period of time, will create tissue degradation and autoimmune disease. And that's what you want to be empowered to know one way or the other. So if a gluten-free diet is right for you, go gluten-free. And how do you know that? You get tested. If you don't know that, you never really commit to the diet fully, and you never commit to the learning curve, and you never really, like you said, make it your truth. And it's very, very important that if you're going to ever commit, doesn't matter what diet it is, what's the justification behind all the diets? Because you know, Lillian, you've had 100 billion guests talk probably about diet, and every one of us has a different opinion, and we're all right to a certain extent. We're right based on our experiences.
Correct.
So what makes us right, okay, is everybody's uniquely different. Some people are going to respond in one way. Some people are going to respond in another way. That's why I'm a big objective person. I think that, the outcome of the response should be validated by whether or not it's the right thing for that person to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it's when we generalize that we get people in trouble. Low fat movement, low sugar movement,
Oh, yeah.
high protein, high fat movement. Those are generalizations, and many people reaped a lot of benefit from those movements, but many people did not. And it's because they're generalized movements. In order to cut through the clouds, you've got to get biochemically, uniquely specific. Each person is unique, so test them. In my clinic, we do HLA-DQ testing for gluten. We do food allergy testing. We do environmental chemical testing. We look at their microbiome. We see whether or not they have the capacity to absorb and digest nutrients. We measure for vitamin and mineral deficiencies. We measure to see if they've got heavy metal exposures. We're measuring the things that are unique to that person so that any advice that we give is customized advice and not generalized.
I love it. I love it. What's your rate to see a patient when they come to see you?
So when somebody comes in, I don't even know what my prices are. No, I think
it's free. It's free.
I think the first appointment is like $250 just to talk.
But how much time do you spend with them?
Usually about an hour, and we go through their history. We have a long conversation. I do an exam, and then whatever I feel like I need to see with that person, I'll make my recommendations. So if I think there's a possibility they're gluten sensitive or that they need, allergy testing or whatever, then that's what we'll make our recommendations. And then whatever those recommendations are, when the data comes back in, we take the data, we sit down with the patients, and we say, this is you. You can either choose to follow it or you can choose to ignore it. Either way, I'm going to go home tonight, and I'm going to sleep really, really well. So it's your choice. In essence, I'm not a coercer. I don't want to coerce anyone into doing something they're not comfortable about doing.
Yeah.
Because I believe, just like with an alcoholic, they got to be ready to admit there's a problem, and they have to take on that challenge themselves. My job is just to be the coach to say, look, this is what you can do that's unique to you. So if you apply this, the outcome should be predictably in your favor.
Well, we're all addicts. We're every single one of them. Every single one of us.
I'll raise my hand. I'm an addict too.
Yeah,
totally.
Every single one of us. And so we play these rationalization games with whatever our addiction is. Is it sugar? That's not really real. It's just 3 grams, just this or just that. If it's gluten, okay, how can we're lulled into believing that we're doing the right things, gluten-free, sugar-free, GMO-free, all these, non-GMO. So we're lulled into compliance. We really are. And it's time to stop thinking like an addict and empowering ourselves and living a responsible life. Because whatever we put into our life is what we get out of it. And some of us think that what we're doing is the right thing. But when we look truly at what we've learned, our truth that we learned from our parents, somewhere along the way, something went wrong. That's that square tire that you talked about that just ain't round. And we're treating it like a round tire. We need to start looking at ourselves with our soul shovel, which is what as my service mark is. Another service mark is the soul shovel, where we dig until there's only truth. And once we get to that place with no blame, no fault, no shame, I believe that we will find true healing. And I'm so grateful to you, Dr. Osborne, for truly being a champion of that. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to our next conversation.
Yeah, ditto. Me too.
Yes. And to you, my viewing friends, thank you for watching today. I'm looking forward to our next time together. We'll see you soon.